Daniel Lawrence. Characters and work by Peo.
Sing a happy song. La 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 la, Smurf the whole day long. Next time you're feeling blue, just let a smile begin. Happy things will come to you, so smurf yourself a grin. La 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 la, now you know the tune.
Chapter 1. Lost and Found. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of the whispering woods, casting long, dancing shadows across the forest floor. Rainie stepped off the porch of her mother Eileen's summer home, the screen door closing behind her with a familiar thwack. The air was thick, with the scent of damp earth and pine needles, a refreshing change from the dusty heat of the village. She didn't intend to go far, but the forest had a way of pulling her in. Every twisted root and mossy stone seemed to whisper a secret. As she wandered deeper into the shade, a strange, rhythmic pulsing caught her eye. It was nestled in a bed of velvet green moss at the base of a gnarled oak tree. A mushroom, but unlike any she had seen in her mother's botanical book. The cap was a brilliant, nebula blue, dusted with silver speckles that shimmered like stars. It didn't just sit there. It seemed to breathe, emitting a soft, ethereal glow that made the surrounding grass look like it was bathed in moonlight. "What are you?" Rainie whispered, kneeling. Her curiosity, always a bit louder than her caution, won out. She reached out a finger and gently tapped the glowing cap. The effect was instantaneous. A tingle like static electricity raced up her arm, and suddenly, the world began to roar. Rainie felt a sickening sense of vertigo. The ground didn't fall away. Instead, the world grew. The tiny oak sapling beside her shot upward, becoming a towering redwood. The moss she had been kneeling on expanded into a thick, spongy jungle. A single blade of grass nearby stretched and widened until it was a broad, emerald spear reaching toward a sky she could no longer see through the thicket of stems. When the world finally stopped shaking, Rainie sat trembling on a leaf that felt as large as a mattress. Silence returned to the forest. But it was a different kind of silence, heavy and intimidating. A simple cricket's chirp in the distance now sounded like a thunderous drum. She was lost, alone, and no bigger than a ladybug. "Help?" she called out. "Mum, help me, please!" But her voice sounded thin and tiny in the vast green labyrinth. She began to trek through the forest of grass, her boots sinking into the soft soil. Every dewdrop was a crystal boulder. Every beetle that scurried past was a terrifying beast. She pushed through a dense wall of clover, her breath hitching in her throat, and stumbled into a small, sandy clearing. She froze. Standing just a few feet away was someone or something she had never seen in any of her stories. The girl was small, exactly Rainie's new height, with skin the color of a clear summer sky. She wore a pristine white dress and a matching curved hat, her long golden hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She was currently leaning over, inspecting a flower, but she froze the moment she saw Rainie. The two of them stared in stunned silence. Rainie's heart hammered against her ribs. She had never heard of a Smurf, and for Smurfette, the sight of a human girl shrunk down to size but still wearing big person clothes was a total impossibility. Smurfette was the first to move. She tilted her head, her blue eyes wide with wonder. You aren't a Smurf," she said, her voice melodic and kind. "But you're my size. How?" Rainie took a shaky breath and stepped forward. "I touched a glowing mushroom. My name is Rainie." A warm smile broke across Smurfette's face, instantly melting Rainie's fear. She stepped forward and extended a small blue hand. "I'm Smurfette. It's very nice to meet you, Rainie." Rainie smiled. "It's nice to meet you too, Smurfette." As they shook hands, the strangeness of the situation seemed to fade, replaced by a sudden, easy friendship. They sat together on a fallen twig, and Rainie explained the sparkling blue fungus and the dizzying transformation. Smurfette listened intently, her expression turning thoughtful. "A star mushroom," she murmured. "They're rare, and very temperamental. Don't you worry though. If anyone can figure out how to get you back to your mother's house, it's Papa Smurf. He knows everything there is to know about forest magic. She stood up and reached for Rainie's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Come on, the village isn't far, and you're going to love it there. Just try not to step on any of the bridge trolls on the way. With a giggle, Smurfette led the way, and the two new friends disappeared into the giant green world, heading toward the hidden heart of the woods. Chapter 2. The Human Visitor. The walk through the giant forest felt like an odyssey. To Rainie, the shadows under the ferns were deep and cool, and the sound of distant birds sounded like the calls of ancient dragons. Smurfette led the way with a confident skip, her white heels clicking rhythmically against the twigs. Almost there, Smurfette chirped, pausing before a massive, moss-covered log that lay across a stream. This is the secret way. Keep close! They slipped through a knothole in the wood, and for a moment, everything went dark. Then, as they emerged from the other side, the world opened up into a sun-drenched valley. Rainie gasped. Spread out before her was a village that looked like it had been plucked straight from a dream. Instead of wooden cabins or stone houses, the homes were giant, colorful mushrooms with chimneys puffing out sweet-smelling smoke. Welcome, Smurfette said with a proud flourish of her hand. To Smurf Village. Rainie didn't have much time to take in the architecture before a sea of blue began to swirl around her. A human, a voice cried out. She's Smurf-sized, another added. Look at her clothes. They aren't Smurfy at all. Dozens of little blue people, all wearing white hats and trousers, gathered around. Some held hammers, others carried baskets of Smurf berries, and one who looked quite strong was even balancing a heavy crate on one shoulder. Despite their surprise, their faces were filled with warmth and curiosity rather than fear. Rainie found herself shaking hands, nodding hello, and answering a dozen questions at once. Make way! Make way! Smurfette laughed, gently ushering Rainie through the crowd. She needs to see Papa Smurf. It's an emergency. They stopped in front of a particularly large mushroom house with a bright red cap. Unlike the others, the Smurf who stepped out of the front door wore a red hat and a matching red pair of trousers. He had a thick, snowy white beard and eyes that sparkled with wisdom. Papa Smurf! Smurfette exclaimed. This is Rainie. She's had a bit of a magical accident. Inside the house, the walls were lined with heavy books, glass vials filled with colorful liquids, and dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. Rainie sat on a stool made of a polished acorn and told her story: the summer home, the walk in the woods, and the glowing, star-dusted blue mushroom. Papa Smurf listened intently, stroking his beard. When she finished, he climbed a small ladder to pull a dusty, leather-bound tome from a high shelf. He flipped through the yellowed pages until he stopped at a sketch of the very mushroom Rainie had described. The Caroleum astrum, Papa Smurf murmured. The blue star mushroom. It is a powerful bit of forest magic, Rainie. It doesn't just shrink the body. It shifts your essence into our realm. Can you fix it? Rainie asked, her voice small. Papa Smurf looked at her kindly. I can, but it is not as simple as a flick of a wand. The recipe for the reversal potion requires very specific ingredients, some of which only bloom during certain phases of the moon. I will have to study my recipes and prepare the cauldron. He paused, giving her a reassuring smile. It will take some time. I'm afraid you'll have to stay with us for a while. Rainie felt a mix of nerves and excitement. She missed her mother, but the idea of living in a mushroom house was like a storybook come to life. Don't look so worried, Smurfette said, grabbing Rainie's hand and pulling her back toward the door. If you're going to be a guest of the village, you need to know where everything is. We'll start with the bakery. Baker Smurf just took a batch of Smurfberry crunch cakes out of the oven. With a wave to Papa Smurf, Rainie stepped back out into the bright village, ready to see what life was like when you were only 3 apples tall. Chapter 3. A New Friend. While the light burned late in Papa Smurf's laboratory as he pored over ancient scrolls, the rest of the village was alive with music and laughter. Rainie's initial fear of being small had begun to melt away, replaced by the sheer magic of Smurfette's company. If you're going to be a temporary Smurf, Smurfette said with a mischievous glint in her eye. You have to learn how to smurf like a pro. The afternoon became a blur of color and joy. They started in the meadows just beyond the mushroom houses, where the wildflowers towered over their heads like giant, fragrant umbrellas. Together, they picked armfuls of forget-me Smurfs and golden lilies, the petals soft and cool against Rainie's skin. Next came the games. Rainie found that being small made everything an Olympic sport. They played a rowdy game of Smurf ball with Hefty Smurf and some of the others, where the ball was a large, bouncy puffball from a nearby reed. Rainie was surprisingly fast, darting between the blue-skinned players, her laughter echoing through the clearing. They even spent an hour helping Handy Smurf carry light wooden planks for a new garden fence, proving that even a visitor could be part of the team. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and orange, the two girls retreated to Smurfette's mushroom house. It was a cozy space, filled with the scent of lavender and decorated with mirrors and ribbons. Rainie sat on a soft footstool while Smurfette stood behind her, carefully running a small, silver-backed brush through Rainie's hair. Your hair is so different from mine, Smurfette whispered, her touch gentle. It's like silk. And yours is like spun gold, Rainie replied, smiling at Smurfette's reflection in the mirror. Then it was Rainie's turn. She took the brush and began to style Smurfette's famous golden locks, braiding in a few of the tiny blue flowers they had picked earlier. For the first time since she had touched the glowing mushroom, the lump of homesickness in Rainie's chest vanished completely. She realized that even though she was far from her mother's summer home, and her world was now giant and strange, she wasn't alone. Smurfette turned around, looking at her new braids in the mirror, and then looked directly at Rainie. She reached out and took Rainie's hands in hers. I've met many people in the forest, Rainie, Smurfette said softly. But I've never met anyone quite like you. Rainie squeezed her hands back. I feel the same way, Smurfette. I was so scared when I first shrank, but meeting you made it okay. In that quiet moment, amidst the ribbons and the fading sunlight, a silent promise was made. They weren't just a guide and a traveler anymore. They were best friends for life. Chapter 4. The Dark Cloud. The morning began with a rush of adrenaline. Deep in the woods, where the willow branches grew in natural, gravity-defying spirals, Rainie was experiencing her first lesson in Smurfboarding. Keep your knees bent, Rainie, Hefty shouted, effortlessly gliding down a mossy loop. Rainie followed suit, her heart hammering as she zipped along the bark. Behind her, Smurfette cheered, while Brainy Smurf tried to explain the physics of momentum, and Clumsy Smurf predictably nearly tumbled into a patch of ferns. For a moment, the world was nothing but green blurs and joyful wind. Exhausted and laughing, the group eventually settled by the edge of a crystal-clear lake. The water was so still it looked like a mirror. I never knew the forest could be this much fun, Rainie panted, splashing her face with a cool droplet. But the peace didn't last. A heavy, rhythmic thump began to vibrate through the ground. The birds went silent. From the shadows of the twisted oaks, a jagged, terrifying figure emerged. It was a man, but he was gargantuan compared to them, with a tattered black robe and a toothy, wicked grin. Behind him lurked a mangy orange cat with a notched ear. Gargamel and Azrael! Smurfs! The wizard shrieked, his voice like grinding stones. Finally! I'll have my soup! Run! Hefty barked, grabbing his board. The group scrambled into the undergrowth, but the giant's hand moved like lightning. Gargamel's shadow fell over Rainie. Before she could dive into a hollow log, his massive fingers closed around her. He lifted her high into the air, his eyes widening in confusion. What is this? He muttered, bringing her close to his nose. You aren't blue, but you're Smurf-sized. A mutation? A prize. Azrael, look! A human girl for my collection! Ignoring the shouts of the Smurfs below, Gargamel shoved Rainie into a deep pocket and stomped off toward the spooky woods. Rainie was eventually tossed into a cold, iron-barred cage inside Gargamel's hovel. The air smelled of sulfur and old socks. What do you want from me? Gargamel leaned over the cage, his shadow swallowing her whole. You're gonna tell me about the Smurfs, for they are the key to power, he said evilly. Rainie got scared. But why? Gargamel grins, making Rainie worried. Once I catch your little blue friends, he sneered, I'll drain the magic from every single one of them. Then, Use that magic to become the most powerful wizard in the world. And you'll be my witness before I find a use for you, too." He cackled and vanished into the back room, leaving Rainie alone in the dim light. Rainie sits in the cage, feeling helpless and lost. Until, click. A tiny sound came from the windowsill. Rainie looked up to see Brainy peering through a gap in the stone, holding a set of lockpicking tools. Behind him, Smurfette, Hefty, and Clumsy slipped inside. "Don't worry, Rainie," Smurfette whispered, her face tight with determination. "We're getting you out of here." Brainy worked the lock with frantic precision until the cage door groaned. Hefty stepped forward, his muscles bulging as he wrenched the door off its hinges with a silent, powerful tug. As Rainie steps out of the cage, Smurfette runs over and hugs her tightly. "Oh, Rainie, I'm so glad you're all right," she said in relief. Rainie hugs her back, feeling grateful and relieved. "Me too, Smurfette. Thank you so much for rescuing me. You have no idea how happy I am to see you." Just as they were about to leave, Gargamel's heavy footsteps returned. "Who's whispering out there?" "Now, Clumsy," Hefty hissed. Clumsy, for once using his nature to his advantage, tripped over a pile of alchemy jars, sending them crashing into Gargamel's path. The wizard slipped on a puddle of slippery potion, falling flat on his face with a thunderous crash. Go, go, go. The 5 of them bolted out the window, diving into the thick fog of the spooky woods. They didn't stop running until the dark towers of the hovel were far behind them, and the warm, glowing mushrooms of the village appeared on the horizon. Safe at last, Rainie hugged Smurfette, her hands still shaking but her heart full of gratitude for her new family. Chapter 5. True Blue. The moonlight filtered through the round windows of Smurfette's mushroom house, casting soft, circular patterns on the floor. Outside, the village was quiet. But inside, the adrenaline from the day's escape had finally faded, replaced by a heavy, thoughtful silence. Rainie and Smurfette sat cross-legged on the soft quilt of the bed, a bowl of plump, juicy Smurf berries between them. Rainie picked one up, turning the small blue fruit over in her fingers. "Smurfette?" Rainie asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I've been wondering, out of all the Smurfs I've met, Brainy, Hefty, Clumsy, even Papa Smurf, everyone is a boy. How is it that you're the only girl in the village?" Smurfette set her berry down, her expression turning distant and a little sad. She took a deep breath. "I wasn't always a true blue Smurf, Rainie. Actually, I wasn't born a Smurf at all. I was created by Gargamel," Rainie gasped, her eyes widening. "He made me out of clay and a cold heart," Smurfette continued, looking at her hands. "He sent me here to cause trouble, to trick the Smurfs and lead them into a trap. I was gray and mean back then, but the Smurfs didn't treat me like an enemy. They treated me with kindness. And Papa Smurf, he saw something in me that even I didn't see. He used his magic and his love to change me, inside and out. He made me who I am today." Rainie reached out, her own heart aching. "I felt so useless today," she confessed, her voice trembling. "When Gargamel grabbed me, I was just a toy to him. I felt so small and weak. I wish I was strong like Hefty or brave like you. I don't want to be helpless anymore." Smurfette moved closer, taking Rainie's hand in both of hers. Her blue eyes were bright with sincerity. "Rainie, look at me," Smurfette said firmly but kindly. "Strength isn't just about lifting heavy logs. You walked into a giant forest alone. You faced a wizard and didn't give up. Being brave means being scared and doing it anyway. You have a heart as big as the world, and that is a magic all its own." She squeezed Rainie's hand. "You might not be blue, and you might not stay this size forever, but in here," she tapped Rainie's chest, "you are as true blue as any Smurf I know."
I know what's on your mind. I've been there too. One too many times. It's time to let go. Go live your life. You got a story that but you got arrived. You were born to be great, born to be real, born to be wild. You were born to have faith, faith in yourself, born to survive. Don't ever let anyone say not anyone. When the world says give it up, keep going 'cause you wanted something. Don't ever let anyone say not anyone. Say not anyone. No. So when you feel like nothing works, when you try but it's getting worse, getting harder by the minute. You don't have to be a cynic, you don't have to have a limit. The universe is telling us there's something more to life, but you've been only seeing what's in front of your eyes. You were born to be great, born to be real, born to be wild. You were born to have faith, faith in yourself, born to survive. Don't ever let anyone say not anyone. When the world says give it up, keep going 'cause you wanted something. Don't ever let anyone say not anyone.
The tears that had been stinging Rainie's eyes finally spilled over, but they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. She leaned forward, and the two girls shared a long, loving hug. In that moment, the iron cage and the dark woods felt 1,000,000 miles away. They weren't just friends, they were sisters in spirit. Chapter 6. Freeze Balls. The following morning broke with a golden sun, but a strange chill lingered in the air. Rainie and Smurfette headed out to the edge of the forest, baskets in hand, to gather the ripest Smurf berries for the village's winter stores. Back at the village, the rhythm of hammers and saws filled the air as Hefty and the others worked on reinforcing the bridge. "Look," Rainie said, pointing toward the clouds. "What a huge bird!" Smurfette's face went pale. Circling high above, its tattered wings blocking out the sun, was a creature Rainie hadn't seen before, a giant, mean-eyed vulture. "That's Monty," Smurfette whispered, her voice trembling. "Gargamel's scout! Rainie, run! We have to warn Papa Smurf!" They sprinted back toward the mushroom houses, their breath coming in short gasps. They reached the center of the village just as Papa Smurf emerged from his lab. "Papa Smurf! Monty is here!" But they were too late. The bushes at the village edge exploded outward as a massive, black-robed figure stomped into the clearing. Gargamel's eyes were wild with triumph. "I found you! No more hiding!" he roared. The Smurfs scattered like blue marbles, but Azrael had been busy. The clever cat had set heavy branch traps at every exit. As the Smurfs bumped into the barriers, Gargamel reached into his bag and pulled out small, glowing blue spheres. "Try my latest invention," he cackled, hurling the freeze balls. When the spheres hit the ground, they erupted into clouds of icy, magical frost. One by one, the Smurfs were frozen mid-run, turned into motionless statues. Monty swooped down, expertly scooping the frozen Smurfs into a heavy burlap sack. Soon, the village was silent. The bridge was broken, the houses were overturned, and every Smurf, including Smurfette and Papa Smurf, was trapped in the bag over Gargamel's shoulder. Only Rainie remained, standing, trembling among the ruins. Gargamel looked down at her, his lip curling in a sneer. "I used my bird to make you lead me right to your little friends, girl. And as for you," he let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "You're nothing but a lost little human girl. You're no threat to a wizard like me." He turned on his heel and disappeared into the woods, his evil laughter echoing through the trees. Rainie sank onto a jagged rock, burying her face in her hands. The silence of the destroyed village was deafening. "I'm alone," she sobbed. "Gargamel was right. I'm just a little girl. There's nothing I can do." Actually, a small, muffled voice said from behind a fallen mushroom chimney. I think there's a whole lot you can do. Rainie gasped and looked up. Clumsy crawled out from under a pile of debris, shaking dust from his white hat. He had been so far behind the others that Gargamel hadn't even noticed him. Clumsy, you're safe, Rainie cried. But the others, they're gone. I can't save them. I'm not strong enough. Clumsy walked over and placed a small blue hand on her knee. His eyes, usually full of confusion, were now bright and steady. Gargamel is wrong about you, Rainie. And you're wrong about yourself. Papa Smurf always says, when the going gets Smurf, the Smurf get going. Rainie wiped her eyes, looking at the tiny, brave Smurf. You're not just a girl, Clumsy continued, standing tall. You're a friend, and friends don't leave each other behind. A spark of fire reignited in Rainie's chest. She stood up, dusting off her dress, and tightening the laces on her boots. She wasn't trembling anymore. She looked toward the dark path, leading to the spooky woods with the eyes of a hero. You're right, Clumsy, she said, her voice firm. We're going to get our friends back. Together, the small human girl and the clumsiest Smurf in the forest set off into the shadows, determined to show the wizard exactly what a little girl could do. Chapter 7. The Brave Rescue. The spooky woods lived up to their name. The trees were twisted into skeletal shapes, and a thick gray fog clung to the ground like a wet blanket. Rainie and Clumsy moved like shadows, their tiny footsteps silent against the dry leaves. There it is, Clumsy whispered, pointing to the jagged, stone tower of Gargamel's hovel. Outside the door, Azrael lay sprawled in a patch of moonlight, his tail twitching as he dreamt of chasing blue mice. Rainie held her breath as they tiptoed past his whiskers. Inside, the hovel was a chaotic mess of bubbling cauldrons and rusty bird cages. Rainie's heart sank as she saw them dozens of Smurfs, including Papa Smurf and Hefty, locked behind iron bars. In the center of the room stood a terrifying contraption, the Smurfstractor. It was a mess of copper pipes, glass jars, and whirring gears, all vibrating with a low, menacing hum. Gargamel was hunched over it, cackling as he flipped heavy switches. Almost ready, he shrieked. Soon, the essence of the Smurfs will be mine. Rainie, over here, a tiny voice hissed. Rainie and Clumsy darted behind a stack of old books to find Smurfette in a lone cage near the machine. Clumsy fumbled with his lockpicks, and with a satisfying click, the door swung open. Smurfette threw her arms around Rainie in a quick, fierce hug. I knew you'd come, Smurfette whispered. We have a plan, Rainie said, her voice steady. Clumsy, you and Smurfette free the others. I'm going to shut that machine down. While the Smurfs began a silent jailbreak, Rainie climbed the vibrating pipes of the Smurfstractor. She reached the main control panel, but as she reached for the lever, a shadow loomed over her. You! Gargamel roared, his face turning purple with rage. You meddling little brat! He reached into his robe and hurled a freeze ball with all his might. Rainie saw the blue glow coming and dived to the side, swinging off a copper pipe like an acrobat. The ball missed her by an inch and smashed directly into the Smurfstractor's core. Crack boom! The machine didn't freeze, it short-circuited. The gears began to grind in reverse, and thick, purple smoke started pouring out of the vents. Gargamel, now truly furious, chases after Rainie until he had her cornered against a heavy wooden crate. No more games, he snarled, reaching out his massive hands. You cannot save anyone or anything, not in this size. A little girl alone is no match for me. Suddenly, two small figures landed on the crate beside Rainie. Leave her alone, Smurfette and Clumsy shouted together. That's the one difference between you and Rainie, Gargamel, Smurfette added, standing tall. She's not alone. Yeah, Clumsy added next. She has us. Smurfs, attack. Papa Smurf's voice rang out from across the room. From every corner of the hovel, the freed Smurfs swarmed. They threw old ladles, heavy potion bottles, and dusty books. Azrael and Monty tried to help their master, but the Smurfs gained the other hand. Hefty led a group that tipped over a giant stack of firewood, sending logs rolling toward the wizard's feet. Gargamel tripped, flailing his arms, and fell backward with a thunderous thud, knocked out cold. Before they could celebrate, the Smurfstractor started to get overheated. The machine! It's going to blow! Rainie screamed. Papa Smurf yelled, "Run for it, Smurfs!" Rainie grabbed Smurfette's hand, and the Smurfs formed a blue chain, racing out the front door and diving into the safety of the bushes. A split second later, the hovel shook. The Smurfs' tractor erupted in a spectacular explosion of magical energy. Instead of fire and debris, the sky was filled with a shower of brilliant, sparkling sparks, blue, pink, and gold, lighting up the spooky woods like a magnificent fireworks show. Gargamel, Azrael, and Monty were caught in the magical updraft, sent tumbling high into the sky until they were nothing but tiny specks in the distance. Silence returned to the forest. Rainie stood at the edge of the woods, the colorful sparks still drifting down around her like snow. One by one, the Smurfs gathered around her. They cheered, they danced, and then they all reached out to hug her. "You did it, Rainie," Smurfette said. "You saved us all." "Yeah," Clumsy added, hugging her tightly. "You were amazing!" "You were very brave, Rainie," Brainy said, feeling very impressed. "A job well smurfed," Hefty added, patting her on the back. Papa Smurf looked up at Rainie with immense pride. "Give it up for Rainie Smurf!" And all the Smurfs cheered for their friend. Rainie looked at her friends, her family, and finally smiled. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was the hero of the Smurfs. Chapter 8. The Farewell Party. The following days were filled with the sound of busy hammers and the cheerful whistling of Smurfs at work. The village was healing. Rainie was right in the middle of it all, helping Handy move lumber and assisting Baker in restacking the bakery shelves. She worked with a strength she hadn't known she possessed, her heart lightened by the smiles of the friends she had saved. When the final mushroom chimney was repaired, Papa Smurf declared a celebration unlike any the woods had ever seen. As the moon rose, the village transformed. Lanterns made of glowing fireflies hung from the branches, and a long table groaned under the weight of Smurfberry crunch cakes, sweet nectar drinks, and trays of truffles. The Smurf band struck up a lively tune with their lutes and drums, and the air was filled with singing. "To Rainie!" Hefty shouted, hoisting a cup of nectar. "The bravest human to ever wear a Smurf-sized pair of boots!" The village erupted in cheers. Rainie laughed, her cheeks flushed with happiness, as Smurfette pulled her into a spinning dance. They twirled through the clearing, their feet flying over the soft grass, two best friends lost in the magic of the moment. But as the party began to wind down, Papa Smurf stepped forward, holding a small, crystal vial, filled with a liquid that shimmered like a liquid rainbow. "The time has come, Rainie," Papa Smurf said softly. "The moon is in the correct phase, and the potion is complete. One sip, and you will return to your own world, to your mother, and to your own size." Rainie looked at the vial, then at the circle of blue faces surrounding her. She felt a sudden, sharp ache in her chest. She wanted to go home. She missed Eileen and the comfort of her summer house, but the thought of leaving the village felt like leaving a piece of her soul behind. "I don't want to forget you," she whispered, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. Papa Smurf took her hand, his eyes warm and wise. "You could never forget us, Rainie, just as we could never forget the girl who stood against a wizard for us. And remember, the forest is large, but the heart knows the way. You are welcome here any time the star mushrooms glow." After a final round of hugs from Brainy, hair ruffles from Hefty, and a clumsy but sweet stumble from Clumsy, Smurfette took Rainie's hand. "One last walk?" Smurfette asked. "One last walk," Rainie said. Chapter 9. Until we Smurf again. They walked back through the secret log and into the giant forest, back to the very spot where the glowing blue mushroom had first changed everything. The woods felt peaceful now, the shadows no longer threatening. They stood in the clearing where they had first shaken hands, two friends sharing one last quiet moment before the magic took hold. The flower field looked different now than it had when Rainie first arrived. The towering petals that had once looked like giant umbrellas were just ordinary daisies again in the fading light. Rainie and Smurfette stood at the center of the clearing, the world around them quiet and still. The weight of the goodbye was heavy. Rainie looked down at her best friend, the girl who had taught her that courage comes in all sizes. A single tear escaped and rolled down Rainie's cheek, sparkling like the magic mushroom that had started this whole adventure. Without a word, Rainie knelt and pulled Smurfette into a hug so tight it felt as though they might never let go. Smurfette squeezed back, her small blue arms wrapped around Rainie's neck. Then, Smurfette pulled away just enough to reach up and plant a soft, sweet kiss on Rainie's forehead. "Best friends for life," Smurfette whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "no matter how big the world gets." Rainie nodded, her heart full. She uncorked the crystal vial Papa Smurf had given her and took a single sip. The liquid tasted like starlight and honey. The transformation was fast this time. There was no vertigo or scary roaring sound, only a warm, gentle pulling sensation. Rainie watched as Smurfette grew smaller and smaller, disappearing into the tall grass, until the blades of clover were once again just tiny plants at Rainie's feet. Rainie stood up, her long legs stretching out, her big person clothes fitting perfectly once more. She was back. The forest was no longer a giant labyrinth. It was just the familiar woods behind her mother's summer home. For a moment, she felt a pang of loneliness. She looked down at the grass, searching for a flash of blue or a tiny white hat, but the clearing was empty. Yet, as she turned to walk toward the glowing lights of Eileen's house, a soft breeze rustled the leaves. She stopped and tilted her head. Faintly, almost like a memory, she heard it, a rhythmic, happy tune drifting through the trees. It was the sound of dozens of tiny voices singing a song of work and friendship. La 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 la. Rainie smiled, a secret joy lighting up her face. She knew she would never look at a mushroom or a wildflower the same way again. She walked happily toward the porch, her steps light, knowing that just out of sight, her friends were safe, happy, and waiting for her next visit.